June 8, 1913. In the quiet town of Samford, a young girl set out on what seemed like a simple walk home. But in the shadows of the scrublands and along the lonely dirt roads, something terrifying awaited her. A fate so brutal that it would shock the entire community and leave questions that have never been answered. This is the story of Ivy Mitchell, a child whose life was stolen in a single, horrifying afternoon, and a mystery that still haunts the streets of Samford to this day. Ivy Mitchell was born on the 10th of January 1902 in Grafton, New South Wales, a steadily growing town nestled along the Clarence River. She was one of several children, born to James Alexander Mitchell and his wife Jensine Witterup, who was of Danish origin and had made a new life in Australia. But Ivy's early years in Grafton were short-lived. The family soon moved north to the small town of Samford in Queensland, seeking new opportunities. Life took a dark turn in 1912 when Ivy's mother passed away. The quiet void left in the household forced the family to adjust, and soon after, her father remarried. Ivy and her siblings had to navigate the upheaval of a new family dynamic, learning to adapt to a home that was no longer the same. By 1913, Ivy celebrated her 11th birthday, growing up in a nation that was itself finding its footing. Australia had only recently unified through the Federation of the Colonies in 1901, yet beneath the new political order, the ancient cultures of the Indigenous Australians remained woven into the land's identity, a reminder of a heritage stretching back tens of thousands of years. Despite the challenges of her early life, Ivy thrived in her small community. She was a bright, obedient, and well-liked girl, careful with her chores, diligent at school, and always ready to play outside with friends. Life felt full of possibility, both for her and for the young nation she called home. On Sunday, the 8th of June, 1913, Ivy's family attended church as usual. Afterward, she went to visit her friend, 7-year-old Mary Frisch, arriving in the late morning. The two girls spent hours laughing and playing, wrapped up in the innocence of childhood. As the afternoon wore on, Ivy prepared to walk home, leaving in the late afternoon around 4 to 5 p.m. She warned Mary that she didn't want to be out after dark. Her house was roughly 2 miles away, along dirt roads that meandered through stretches of scrubland and open fields with hardly a house in sight. Mary accompanied her for the first half mile, then handed Ivy some flowers and lollies, saying goodbye as Ivy set off alone. As darkness fell, concern began to grow at the Mitchell household. Ivy's 16-year-old brother, James, noticed she had not returned. It was unlike her. She was always home before nightfall. Taking a lantern, he set out along the familiar dirt track, calling her name, eventually reaching the Frisch home. Mr. Frisch informed him that Ivy had left hours earlier. Anxiety mounting, James ran back to his house to alert his father. Without hesitation, James's father, Mr. James Mitchell, gathered his eldest daughter, Minnie, and James Jr., and together they began searching the streets and nearby paths, calling for Ivy. Other townspeople joined the search, all gripped by worry for the missing girl. Soon, they discovered footprints in the dirt. At first glance, they seemed to belong to an adult male, but a closer look revealed smaller prints alongside them. Lanterns flickered as they traced the trail into thick scrub behind the Park Estate School. The grass was crushed, as if something heavy had been dragged through it. Then, to their horror, Ivy's body was found abandoned among the scrub, her throat cut. News of the tragedy was immediately sent to the Samford post office and quickly relayed to the police. Senior Inspector Garrotti, aware of the gravity of the case, acted without delay. Accompanied by several officers and Dr. Dodds, the government medical officer, he arrived at the scene around midnight to begin a careful investigation. Ivy's body was lifted onto a rug and covered with a sheet. Investigators documented footprints, covering some with boxes while marking the line of other tracks leading away. Officers were stationed along surrounding roads in case the perpetrator remained nearby. Despite the late hour, the remaining officers combed the area, questioning locals and scouring for clues. Plaster casts were made of the footprints, preserved as potential evidence. News of the murder rippled through the tight-knit community. Shock and horror gripped everyone, struggling to comprehend that such violence could touch their quiet streets. The discovery of Ivy's body became the single topic of conversation in homes and shops alike. The girl's body was taken to the hospital mortuary, where Dr. Dodds conducted an autopsy. He confirmed the cause of death was a severe cut to her throat. Cuts on her hands and arms revealed that she had tried to defend herself, bravely resisting the attack. Tragically, it was also determined that she had been sexually assaulted, compounding the horror of her young life cut short. In the hours following the horrifying discovery of Ivy Mitchell's body, the police launched a relentless search for clues, speaking with residents across Samford to uncover any fragment of information that could lead them to the perpetrator. One of the first men they spoke to was a farm laborer named Alexander Gordon. He recalled that around 5 p.m, he had been near the schoolhouse and had stepped into the school garden to pick a couple of oranges. As he made his way home, he saw a man, Ernest Austin, a local farmhand, riding past on horseback. Mr. Gordon remembered Austin calling a brief "good night" holding what appeared to be a small tree branch in his hand. This detail immediately caught the attention of the police. Horse hoof prints had been found near the scene, and the possibility that the murderer had fled on horseback suddenly seemed plausible. The trail led them to the school's water tank, where officers discovered another footprint matching those found in the scrub where Ivy had been left. Alongside this, the sole and heel of a boot were recovered, discarded in the nearby scrubland, a potential key piece of evidence. Investigators spoke with other locals, many of whom confirmed seeing Austin riding that evening. While most recalled him carrying a riding whip rather than a branch, these minor discrepancies only added layers to the investigation, giving officers several avenues to explore as they pieced together the movements of that late afternoon. Senior Inspector Garrity immediately dispatched officers to question Austin. Before they could reach him, another farm laborer named John Loft came forward. Loft reported seeing Austin in the previous nights scraping the soles of his boots with a knife. When Loft was present, Austin had asked him where the pincers were kept, and upon being told, went to retrieve them and began removing the soles from his boots. The significance was undeniable. The sole found in the scrub corresponded perfectly with Austin's boot. Shortly after, Ernest Austin was taken into custody. During questioning, he claimed to work on a farm at Cedar Creek, owned by Mr. James Fogg, and vehemently denied any involvement in Ivy Mitchell's murder. Yet the police pressed on. Around 8 o'clock, Detectives Parr and McCarthy escorted him to the mortuary to view Ivy's body. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, drawn by a mix of grief, disbelief, and morbid curiosity. Inside the mortuary, Austin looked down at the child's lifeless body. When the sheet was lifted, he showed no emotion, simply stating he did not know who she was. Despite his calm demeanor, the evidence against him was mounting. Horse hoof prints, boot soles, witness statements, and Austin's suspicious behavior all pointed to one chilling conclusion. The police formally charged him with murder. The following morning, a preliminary hearing was held at the city police court. Ernest Austin, also known by the alias Ernest Johnson, was 23 years old, a farmhand originally from Victoria. Presiding over the hearing was Mr. E. Eggleston, the police magistrate. Outside, townspeople pressed to catch a glimpse of the man many already suspected was responsible for the heinous crime. The magistrate oversaw the reading of charges, reviewed witness statements, and considered the physical evidence collected. After the hearing, Austin remained in police custody for 8 days as further inquiries were conducted, additional evidence gathered, and the crime scene examined in detail. Investigators delved into Austin's past and uncovered a long record of criminal behavior stretching back to his childhood. At the age of 11, he had been caught stealing and placed under the supervision of the Neglected Children's Department. As he grew older, his offenses escalated. In late 1909, using the alias Ernest Johnson, he was convicted of assault with intent to violate a girl and sentenced to 3 years in Melbourne prison. The parallels between this previous attack and Ivy Mitchell's murder were striking. Both involved a violent assault on a young girl, interrupted or concealed only due to circumstance. Further evidence solidified the case. The boot sole, removed by Austin, matched exactly the footprints at the scene, and the horse hoof prints aligned with those discovered near Ivy's body. Investigators concluded that Austin had committed the murder and attempted to erase traces by washing his hands and clothing at the school's water tank before returning home. Senior Inspector Garati was convinced beyond any doubt Ernest Austin was the man responsible for this most dreadful crime. With the evidence meticulously collected, he was formally charged with murder, setting the stage for one of Samford's most notorious cases. Ernest Austin was confined to prison as he awaited trial, and when the proceedings began on Wednesday, the 27th of August, 1913, the entire community watched with anticipation. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, reporters filled the benches, and every word spoken inside was quickly carried to the streets. The air was thick with curiosity, fear, and a desperate hunger for justice. When asked how he pleaded, Austin calmly replied, "Not guilty." Constable Johnson was among the first to testify. He described arriving at the scene of Ivy Mitchell's murder and later being tasked with gathering evidence. He recalled that on the morning of August 9th, a man named James Fox had handed him a pair of boots said to belong to Austin. Later that same day, Johnson and Detective McCarthy confronted Austin outside a farm. Austin admitted the boots were his. From his room, officers also retrieved a shirt, trousers, a pocket knife, a stick, a jacket, and a saddle, each of them stained with blood. The laboratory confirmed it was human. These items were laid before the court as damning evidence. The prosecution drew particular attention to the stick and a piece of leather found near Ivy's body, both identified by witnesses as belonging to Austin. When shown the stick, Austin denied ever seeing it. But the most critical evidence came from the boots. Detective Constable Apprentice, a surname, not a rank, explained that the footprints left near the crime scene matched Austin's footwear exactly. The iron heel plates on his boots left a distinctive mark, and the broken crossbar on the left heel produced a unique impression, one that could belong to no one else. Austin had even been caught removing the soles and heels from his boots, an act police believed was an attempt to destroy the evidence. When pressed in court, Austin denied everything. He claimed the blood on his clothes was from killing calves 2 weeks earlier. He offered no explanation for the human blood, except to say that perhaps it was his own. Yet further testimony painted a darker picture. Once in prison, Austin had tried to take his own life and, according to Acting Sergeant Roach, had admitted outright that he murdered Ivy Mitchell. The prosecution emphasized that every article of Austin's clothing was marked with blood. But through it all, Austin remained expressionless, showing no sign of remorse. His defense counsel, Mr. Farhi, fought to dismantle the case. He argued that the evidence was purely circumstantial. Even if the blood was human, experts could not prove how recent it was. He reminded the court that when Austin had met locals on the evening of the murder, no one reported seeing blood on his clothes. He suggested that a guilty man would have hidden the evidence. Yet Austin made no effort to do so. And as for the removed boot soles, Farhi claimed it was absurd to believe a killer would destroy evidence so openly. When closing arguments ended, the judge summed up the case. At 1 p.m., the jury retired. They deliberated through the night and into the next day. At last, they returned with their verdict. Ernest Austin was guilty of the brutal murder of Ivy Mitchell. The judge sentenced him to death. On September 22, 1913, Austin was led to the gallows at Boggo Road Gaol. Before his execution, he finally confessed to the crime, admitting his guilt and saying he was sorry for what he had done. Moments later, he was hanged. His body was buried in unconsecrated ground at South Brisbane Cemetery. Ernest Austin was hanged at Boggo Road Gaol in 1913 and is widely regarded as the last person executed in Queensland. In 1922, Queensland became the first jurisdiction in the British Empire to abolish the death penalty. Yet Austin's story did not end there. For more than a century, his name has carried an eerie shadow. Over the years, stories and local legends have emerged of his ghost wandering the halls of Boggo Road Gaol. Some say his apparition appears on stormy nights, his presence heavy, unsettling, a reminder of the crime that condemned him. The prison, with its grim history and chilling silence, remains haunted by tales of Ernest Austin's restless spirit. And for many, his ghost stands as a dark warning, a permanent reminder of the terrible fate of Ivy Mitchell.